Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hey, Archie, does that sound a little low to you? Or does it sound fine? 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh.
Testing from the dies. Testing down below. 1, 2, 3.
I'll call the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure to order. And pursuant to Committee Rule 6F and House Rule 11, Clause 2HF, the chairman may postpone further proceedings today on any question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment in which the recorded vote of the yeas and nays are ordered. I'd ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's meeting. Without objection, that's so ordered. A bill and amendment text have been distributed electronically, and paper copies are available here in the hearing room if you'd like them. As a reminder, the committee will use an electronic system for any requested recorded votes. Today, the committee is considering the authorization and oversight plan for the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure for the 119th Congress, H.R. 1182, the Compressed Gas Cylinder Safety and Oversight Improvements Act of 2025, House Concurrent Resolution 9, authorizing the use of the Capitol grounds for the National Peace Officers Memorial Service of the National Honor Guard and Pipe Band Exhibition, an amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 501, the Promoting Resilient Buildings Act of 2025, H.R. 744, the Disaster Management Cost Modernization Act, H.R. 1382, to amend the Federal Water Pollution Control Act with respect to San Francisco Bay restoration and for other purposes. And finally, I'd ask unanimous consent for the committee to use an amendments roster for any items under consideration by the committee. And without objection, that is so ordered. All right. Our first item for consideration is the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure's Oversight Plan for the 119th Congress. I now call up the Authorization and Oversight Plan for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the document is dispensed with. The Authorization and Oversight Plan is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'd recognize myself for a quick statement. In accordance with House Rule 10, the committee's authorization and oversight plan lays out priority oversight areas for the full committee and all of our subcommittees. The Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has a long history of ensuring that Congress provides the necessary oversight of the programs under the committee's jurisdiction, and this Congress is going to be no different. Our constituents have entrusted us with the safeguarding the country's transportation programs, and this committee is committed to ensuring that the United States transportation system remains a gold standard. Last Congress, the committee successfully passed into law the FAA Reauthorization Act, the Water Resources Development Act, and important public buildings reforms, among other initiatives. And we're going to partner with the administration to ensure these policies are implemented swiftly. This Congress, our committee will continue its tradition of being a workhorse committee and not a showhorse committee, and we're going to advance legislation and conduct robust oversight of issues that fall under our jurisdiction. We worked with Ranking Member Larson to craft this oversight plan. While we may take different approaches on some of the issues, I know we can both agree that conducting oversight is a necessary and important committee function. And with that, I'd urge adoption of the committee's authorization and oversight plan, and I now recognize Ranking Member Larson for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to House Rule 10, the committee is required to adopt an authorization and oversight plan at the start of each Congress that is submitted to the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and the Committee on Administration. Oversight activities fulfill a number of purposes. These activities include ensuring executive compliance with legislative intent, improving the efficiency and effectiveness of governmental operations, and assessing agencies' abilities to carry out program objectives. The committee is also specifically charged with investigating and eliminating waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. Mr. Chairman, thank you for working with us on developing the committee's authorization and oversight plan, and I support adoption of the plan, and I yield back.
Do any other members wish to be recognized for a statement on the authorization and oversight plan? Seeing none, are there any amendments to the authorization and oversight plan for the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure for the 119th Congress? Hearing none, the question is now on adoption and favorable reporting of the authorization and oversight plan for the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure for the 119th Congress. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. And the authorization and oversight plan for the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure for the 119th Congress is adopted. Pursuant to Clause 2D1 of Rule 10 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, the authorization and oversight plan will be submitted to the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and the Committee on House Administration. Our next item for consideration, H.R. 1182, the Compressed Gas Cylinder Safety and Oversight Improvements Act of 2025, and I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Railroads, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials for further consideration on H.R. 1182. And without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself for a quick statement. H.R. 1182, the Compressed Gas Cylinder Safety and Oversight Improvements Act of 2025, is an essential piece of legislation that's going to guarantee foreign manufactured cylinders meet Department of Transportation safety standards. The bill directs the Secretary to publish a rule addressing the approval of foreign manufactured cylinders used for transporting hazardous materials. We must ensure that imported products, especially from countries like China, that carry hazardous materials, that they meet our safety regulations and fully protect Americans. I now recognize Ranking Member Larson for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support H.R. 1182, the Compressed Gas Cylinder Safety Oversight Improvements Act, which Representatives Balderson and Krishnamurthy introduced. This bill requires the Secretary of Transportation to advance a rulemaking to make the standards for foreign manufacturers of compressed gas cylinders that are sold in the U.S. the same as the standards for domestic makers of these cylinders. Compressed gas cylinders are used every day in medical, auto, defense, oil and gas, residential, firefighting, and other purposes. Just last month, PHMSA issued a safety advisory notice regarding unsafe cylinders being sold online to consumers, shippers, and heating, ventilation, air conditioning personnel that were not manufactured to American or even to United Nations standards and lack certification markings. Using these unsafe compressed gas cylinders could cause significant damage to property, physical injury, or death. PHMSA determined that the unmarked empty cylinders being sold in the U.S. on major commercial websites are primarily manufactured by non-U.S. companies. This bill requires a consistent standard for both domestic and foreign manufacturers of compressed gas cylinders, and I support this bipartisan bill. I urge my colleagues to do the same. With that, yield back.
Any other members wish to be recognized? Mr. Nels.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 1182, the Compressed Gas Cylinder Safety Oversight and Improvement Act of 2025, is an America First piece of legislation that will create a level playing field for our domestic producers and help prevent foreign manufacturers from dumping often counterfeit hazmat cylinders into our market. The bill updates federal regulatory framework from foreign manufacturers of compressed gas cylinders to ensure they are held to a higher safety and inspection standards. This bill ensures everyday products used by millions of Americans are held to the same rigorous standards regardless of the country in which they were produced. I commend my colleagues from Ohio, Mr. Balderson, for introducing this legislation, and I'm happy to co-sponsor it and see it pass out of this committee. Thank you, and I yield back.
Do any other members wish to be recognized? Mr. Taylor, do you have a statement?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm proud to support H.R. 1182, the Compressed Gas Cylinder Safety and Oversight Improvements Act of 2025, introduced by my good friend, fellow Ohioan, Mr. Balderson. This common sense legislation ensures that Americans who purchase pressurized gas cylinders receive reliable and safe products. Over the last decade, some foreign manufacturers have sent products into the United States without adhering to our safety standards, putting American lives at risk. This legislation would ensure that all compressed gas cylinders shipped to the United States are safe and adhere to PHMSA's standards. I'm proud to support this legislation that will hold foreign producers accountable and ensure the safety of consumers. Urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1182 and yield back, Mr. Chairman.
We're now considering the bill for amendments. Seeing none. Okay. We'll now proceed to final passage of the legislation. The question is now on the adoption and favorable reporting of H.R. 1182. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 1182 is agreed to and ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. We will now move on to House Concurrent Resolution 9. I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Public Buildings, Emergency Management, Economic Development from further consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 9. Without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself for a quick statement. And I want to thank Subcommittee Chairman Perry and Ranking Member Stanton for their leadership on this resolution. House Concurrent Resolution 9 honors our nation's fallen law enforcement officers who died in the line of duty last year with a memorial service here at the Capitol. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy declared May 15th as National Peace Officer Memorial Day to pay tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice. The first memorial service began as a small gathering of about 125 people. This year, tens of thousands of people from across the country and around the world will make their way to Washington, D.C. in May to participate in this year's National Peace Officers Memorial Service, along with the numerous other events for Police Week. As chairman of this committee, I'm very proud to continue the long tradition of supporting our law enforcement officers by working with the National Fraternal Order of Police and its auxiliary to honor our fallen law enforcement officers. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution and recognize Mr. Larson for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I join you in supporting the passage of H-Con Res 9, which Representative Perry of Pennsylvania and Representative Stanton, Arizona, introduced. This resolution authorizes the Fraternal Order of Police, National Honor Guard, and Pipe Band exhibition to utilize the area surrounding the Grant statue on the east side of the Capitol Reflection Pool on May 14th, 2025, to allow law enforcement personnel from around the country to demonstrate their Honor Guard programs and hold a big pipe band exhibition. In addition, this resolution authorizes the use of the Capitol grounds for the 44th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service on May 15th, 2025. This event, which is hosted by the National Fraternal Order of Police, will honor the federal, state, and local law enforcement officers who lost lives while performing their duties in 2024, including one officer from Washington State, State Patrol Trooper Christopher Gadd. Trooper Gadd was killed in a car crash on March 2nd, 2024 on I-5 in Marysville, Washington, while working a DUI patrol. Trooper Gadd was 27 years old, a husband to his wife Cameron, a father to a 2-year-old girl Kaylin, and himself a member of a law enforcement family. So we get to honor Trooper Gadd's service and offer our condolences to his family today, but also later this year. I support this bipartisan resolution. Thank you, and I yield back.
Do any of the members wish to be, except Mr. Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Ranking Member Larson. I'm proud to have introduced this resolution along with the Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management Subcommittee Ranking Member, Representative Greg Stanton. This resolution authorizes use of the Capitol grounds for the 44th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Event to honor our law enforcement officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Over the past 4 years, the Biden administration sat idly by while crime and violence spread unchecked through our communities. Our police officers lacked the critical support they needed, and they were oftentimes targeted by criminals simply for wearing the uniform. According to the Fraternal Order of Police, last year there were 342 officers shot in the line of duty, 50 of whom were killed. Furthermore, there were 61 ambush-style attacks on law enforcement officers, which resulted in 79 officers being shot, 18 of whom were killed. Unfortunately, just last weekend, a tragedy occurred in the district I'm proud to represent when multiple police officers were shot in the line of duty, and one officer, Andrew Duarte of West York Borough Police Department, made the ultimate sacrifice. These tragic losses are unacceptable. We must do better to support our men and women in law enforcement. That is why I'm extremely honored and proud to once again be able to sponsor this resolution. It is my sincere hope that this memorial service will bring some comfort to the families of the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of their communities and our country. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. I yield back the ballots.
Do any of the members wish to be heard? Ms. Gillen?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Graves and Ranking Member Larson, for organizing this markup and advancing all of these bipartisan measures. I am proud to support H-Con Res 9, a bipartisan bill introduced by my colleagues, Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania and Greg Stanton of Arizona, to authorize the use of the Capitol grounds for the National Peace Officers Memorial Service, the National Honor Guard, and the Pipe Band exhibition. Mr. Chairman, every day, Long Island's law enforcement officers put their lives on the line to keep our community safe and to make Nassau County the safest county in America. During National Police Week and throughout the year, our country thanks and honors the law enforcement officers who go above and beyond to protect our communities. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy declared May 15th to be Peace Officers Memorial Day, and that week to be Police Week. Already this year, 13 police officers have died in the line of duty across the United States, and we must never forget their bravery, their service, and their sacrifice. This May, thousands of law enforcement officers from Long Island and across the country will travel to our nation's capital for Police Week. From the Police Unity Tour to the Candlelight Vigil on the National Mall to the Peace Officers Memorial Service on the lawn of the Capitol, this cherished national tradition ensures that we honor and remember all fallen officers who were killed in the line of duty. One of the many highlights of Police Week is the annual Pipe Band Memorial March, where last year the Nassau County Police Emerald Society Pipe Band proudly represented our community on Long Island. Mr. Chairman, I cannot wait to welcome Long Island's finest back to our nation's capital once again this year, and passing this bipartisan bill is an important first step. I encourage all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join me in supporting this bill and standing up for our nation's law enforcement and first responders. I yield back my time. Thank you.
Mr. Rizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having served the majority of my adult life as a law enforcement officer and attended many, many funerals, this is a good day for law enforcement and for us to show the support that we have for our men and women that wear the uniform. So thank you. God bless you, and let's pray for those officers every day and their families. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Any other members wish to be heard on the bill? Seeing no one, are there any amendments to House Concurrent Resolution 9? Seeing none, we will now proceed to final passage of the legislation. The question is now on the adoption and favorable reporting of House Concurrent Resolution 9. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. And House Concurrent Resolution 9 is agreed to and ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The next item for consideration is H.R. 501, the Promoting Resilient Buildings Act of 2025, and I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management from further consideration of H.R. 501, and without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration, and without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Please designate the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 501, offered by Chairman Graves.
I now recognize myself for a quick statement. The Promoting Resilient Buildings Act of 2025 makes important changes to how FEMA interprets building code definitions within the disaster mitigation programs. Under current interpretations of the law, states are required to adopt the most recent edition of the International Code Council's building codes. The bill simply extends the definition established in the Disaster Recovery Act of 2018 that recognizes the last two editions of published building codes and the need to give states a little bit of flexibility to address hazards specific to their individual circumstances. Emergency managers have highlighted the importance of this flexibility for ensuring resilience against future disasters during hearings that were held in the Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management Subcommittee. The bill also supports disaster victims by testing a mitigation pilot program that would support homeowners who implement simple mitigation measures that could protect and save their homes and lives. And I want to thank Representative Edwards for his continued advocacy on this critical issue. And with that, I'd urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Now I recognize Mr. Larson for a statement.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, I support the Promoting Resilient Buildings Act sponsored by Representative Edwards and Titus. Current law directs FEMA to only consider the latest edition of building codes when implementing pre-disaster mitigation programs. This legislation will allow FEMA to consider the latest two editions of codes. This bill also includes a pilot program championed by Representative Titus within FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, or the BRIC program, making it possible to fund individual home retrofits for the purposes of disaster resilience. The severity of disasters has skyrocketed in recent years, putting homeowners at serious risk. Implementing recommended mitigation measures could make the difference between a family losing its home and life savings, or being able to stay safe and continue its daily routines post-disaster. Homeowners could leverage this pilot to make their roof less flammable or more resilient to wildfires, remove overhanging branches to reduce the risk of damage from severe storms, or even build a tornado safe room. These measures may also come with the added benefit of reduced insurance premiums, and it's critical we support ways to lower premiums and make homes more insurable as disaster risk and insurance costs are ballooning. So I urge my colleagues on both sides to join with me to support this legislation, which passed the House on suspension in the 118th Congress. And I hope our support today is an indication that we are all here to support giving FEMA the resources it needs to carry out its critical work. With that, I yield the balance of my time.
Are there any other amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 501? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 501. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question is now on adoption and favorable reporting of H.R. 501 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 501 as amended is agreed to and ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Next item for consideration is H.R. 744, the Disaster Management Cost Modernization Act. I ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management from further consideration of H.R. 744, and without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself for a quick statement. So under current law, the Stafford Act allows a portion of disaster recovery dollars and pre-disaster mitigation grant funds to pay for management costs. However, these funds are linked to individual disaster declarations, limiting their flexibility. The Disaster Management Cost Modernization Act would streamline this process by giving states much greater control over these funds, allowing them to apply management cost funds across multiple open disasters. I now recognize Mr. Larson for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the Disaster Management Cost Modernization Act that Representatives Neguse, Ezell, Stanton, Titus, Harder, Stansbury, Raskin, Jayapal, and Bonamici have all co-sponsored. This bill gives states and local governments more flexibility when using FEMA assistance to manage the response to major disasters by allowing states to retain any excess management funds after disaster recovery is complete and use them for preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. So in managing disaster declarations, states administer FEMA grants that may be worth billions of dollars, and FEMA allows states to utilize a percentage of these grants to cover the cost of the administrative requirements and grant management. These management costs are strictly tied to each specific disaster declaration, program, and project. However, most states are managing recovery for multiple disaster declarations simultaneously. Consequently, a project inspector working a full day may visit multiple disaster sites in a state, and if those sites are associated with more than one disaster, all associated costs must be parceled out to possibly dozens of open grants. This bill will give states and local governments more flexibility. It'll help states build capacity when preparing for or responding to the next disaster. And one of the most common concerns that we've heard from expert witnesses at hearings regarding emergency management is that states and local governments do not have sufficient capacity to prepare for and respond to disasters. Supporting policy to build capacity is one of the most important actions we can take to ensure nationwide disaster readiness and empower state and local government emergency managers. However, I do want to be clear, this bill is not intended to, this bill is intended to supplement and not supplant FEMA assistance. This Congress hopefully can move forward on the reforms that we've identified in the past in this committee, reforms to FEMA that will help provide more disaster assistance to families that have lost everything and not less disaster assistance. So I support this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same, and with that, I yield back.
Do any other members wish to be heard?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Zell.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this up for consideration. I'm pleased to be a co-sponsor of this bill. States that see multiple disasters already have a lot they need to focus on to respond to management and recovery. This bill will help reduce some of the administrative burdens states have to deal with by providing them with more flexibility on FEMA assistance for management costs. The bill will also incentivize the states to work with FEMA to close disasters faster. I urge support of this legislation as I have been through Hurricane Katrina in my own hometown with 4 feet of mud and water in my house. And let me tell you something, it's a mess. Thank you, sir, and I yield back.
Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It pains me to say it's been flooded out of my house twice in the Susquehanna River Valley, but this legislation, in my opinion, enables states administering multiple open projects to use excess management cost funding to support staffing capacity for emergency management and building disaster response capacity. This further entangles the federal government, which is broke, by the way, in the state's responsibility to provide disaster relief to their own citizens. Worse, this federally funds bureaucrats with money that could and should be used to support actual disaster relief efforts, like the people that were flooded out of their house, like Mr. Rizzo. Continuing the federalization of state disaster roles will only worsen disaster recovery results as the focus is distorted by federal intervention. States don't need the federal government involved. They know what needs to be done, and I think, Mr. Rizzo, you know that, right? By allowing the federal government to float even more management costs, we are providing the framework for bloated state disaster agencies to become even less responsive to the needs of their constituents. And I'm going to urge my colleagues to oppose this bill, and I yield the balance.
Do any other members wish to be heard on the bill? Seeing none, are there any amendments to H.R. 744? Hearing none, we will now proceed to the final passage of the legislation. The question is now on the adoption and favorable reporting of H.R. 744. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. And H.R. 744 is agreed to and favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The next item for consideration is H.R. 1382, a bill to amend the Federal Water Pollution Control Act with respect to San Francisco Bay restoration and for other purposes. I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment from further consideration of H.R. 1382, and without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration without objection. The first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself for a quick statement. H.R. 1382 modifies the existing San Francisco Bay geographic program by authorizing it to execute interagency agreements as well as cooperative agreements and contracts with non-federal partners. Importantly, the legislation also includes a prohibition on any non-federal entity that is affiliated with a country of concern, including Russia, Iran, North Korea, or China, from receiving funding through this program. These modifications align the program to the authorities that other geographic programs already have. I now recognize Mr. Larson for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this legislation that the representative from California, Mr. Huffman, has authored. EPA's Regional San Francisco Bay Restoration Program, much like the Puget Sound program in my state, is a critical place-based initiative to protect and restore an important water body. This bill makes technical changes to the San Francisco Bay program to ensure it has the same options for funding restoration work as other regional programs. In addition, as the chair pointed out, it will prohibit foreign countries of concern from receiving grants provided under this authority, and I appreciate the majority's efforts to work with us on this provision. I support the adoption of H.R. 1382 and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Any other members wish to be heard on the bill? Seeing none, we're now considering the bill for amendments. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have on behalf of Mr. Huffman, I have an amendment at the desk, Huffman Amendment 03.
Please designate.
An amendment to H.R. 1382 offered by Ranking Member Larson, distributed as Amendment 1382 FC 03.
Without objection, the amendment will be considered as read. Mr. Larson is recognized for statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this technical amendment offered by the sponsor of this legislation, the representative from California, Mr. Huffman. This amendment makes a few technical and clarifying changes to the underlying bill, including correcting an incorrect citation from the introduced version. I thank the chair for working with us on this bill and urge my colleagues to support this amendment. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill authorizes the San Francisco Bay Geographic Program to enter into interagency agreements and expand the type of funding it can offer to eligible non-federal entities. Proponents of this bill are seeking to further expand the role of the federal government in the restoration efforts of the San Francisco Bay Estuary, and that might be a noble cause. However, unlike many other estuaries covered by geographic programs, the entirety of the San Francisco Bay Estuary and the area covered by this program fall completely and wholly within the jurisdiction of the state of California. My constituents and constituents all across the other 49 states should not be forced to pay for the restoration efforts of the San Francisco Bay that Californians and San Francisco's are literally unwilling to fund themselves. I urge opposition to this bill, and I yield the balance of my time.
Anyone else wish to be heard? The amendment? I do recognize myself for a quick statement. I do support this amendment. It simply makes some technical changes to the underlying bill, and these changes were developed in a bipartisan manner. And I urge my colleagues to support the amendment. And with that, yield back. Are there any other speakers on this amendment? Seeing none, are there any amendments to the amendment? Seeing none, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. We'll now proceed to final passage of the legislation. The question is now on the adoption and favorable reporting of H.R. 1382 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Hey, the gentleman requests a recorded vote as previously announced pursuant to Committee Rule 6F. Further proceedings on the question are postponed. We've got at least two other markups that are going on right now, so we're going to take a real brief recess to allow members to get here for our postponed recorded vote. So we stand in recess, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever.
We can do it right when we come back. Everybody will come back.
Call the committee back to order. Before we vote, I want to take a moment to allow Ms. Sykes to speak out of order to introduce some constituents that she has here in the room today. Ms. Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, for a moment of personal privilege. I would just like to introduce to the committee Dawn Dissler, who's the CEO of the Akron Metro, our public transit authority in Ohio's 13th, one of them in Ohio's 13th Congressional District. She is joined by Gert Wilms, who's from their Government and Legal Affairs, and Jared Hampshire, the Chief of Staff. I just wanted to make sure that they were recognized because we are working very hard on behalf of the American public to get people to and from our communities, to work, to school, and as a beneficiary of a lot of the great work that this committee has done on a bipartisan basis, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of my district for allowing folks like Don, Gert, and Jared at Metro to serve our community well. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for this moment of personal privilege, and I yield back.
Absolutely, and the committee welcomes you. The committee previously postponed proceedings on H.R. 1382 as amended, which were favorably adopted by voice vote. Is a recorded vote still requested? Recorded vote is still requested. Members will record their vote using the electronic voting system. The vote will be open for 2 minutes, and the chairman intends to vote aye.
The ranking member intends to vote aye.
The clerk now open the vote on favorably reporting H.R. 1382 as amended. There's 1 minute left in the vote.
Like to make sure our freshman guys get a chance.
Have all members been recorded who wish to be recorded? Do any members wish to change their vote? Hearing none, clerk close the vote and announce the total.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there are 40 yeas and 13 nays.
A vote of 40 yeas and 13 nays. The bill as amended is agreed to and ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I want to thank everyone for coming in for today's markup, and I'd ask unanimous consent that each measure ordered today reported today will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute incorporated in any amendments adopted. Without objection, that is so ordered. I'd ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make any technical, clarifying, conforming changes to each of the measures ordered reported today to reflect the actions of the committee. And without objection, that is so ordered. Pursuant to House Rule 22, Clause 1, I'd ask unanimous consent that the chairman or the designee be authorized to offer such motions as may be necessary in the House to go to conference with the Senate on the legislation adopted today or any similar measure. Without objection, that is so ordered. I'd ask unanimous consent that the chairman, after consultation with the ranking member, have authority to strike or revise any provision of the measures ordered reported today that would cause a sequential referral to another committee or that would cause the bill to be subject to the Budget Act or Rule 21, cut-go point of order. Without objection, that is so ordered. Pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2L, I'd ask unanimous consent that all members of the committee have at least 2 calendar days in which to file any supplemental, minority, additional, or dissenting views on the legislation adopted today. Without objection, that is so ordered. Pursuant to Rule 6 of the Rules of the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure, I note the presence of a quorum for all actions taken on committee business today. With that, the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure has completed its business. The committee stands adjourned.